Trump's behaviour and rudeness and aggression emboldens other people to behave like that too. I think, this is just, it's playground behaviour. I mean, honestly, Musk just sounds like, all the blokes who couldn't get girlfriends at school and now sort of like throwing his weight and his money, and his virility around.
Hello, I'm Hugo Rifkind, and now we're going to be unpacking the politics of the day and talking about Liz Truss's plan to launch her own broadcaster. And joining me are two journalists likely to be among the first guests on her free speech media network. And they are Jane Mulkerrins, Associate Editor of The Times Magazine. Hello, Jane.
Morning, booked me already.
And thanks for being here. I bet they have. And Tom McTague, Political Editor of Unheard. Hello, Tom.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Great to have you on. How are you, Tom, this morning?
I'm very well. I'm already giggling at the prospect of that new network.
I just hope she presents every show. It'd be fantastic. I would never listen to it unless I had to write about it, and then it would be it. Anyway, we'll come back to Liz Truss in just a moment, but first let's talk about some real news, or realish, because there's been a bizarre row between Elon Musk, Marco Rubio, and the Polish foreign minister over the use of Elon Musk's Starlink satellite system. To catch you up, it all started when Musk posted that Starlink was the backbone of the Ukrainian army and that their entire front line would collapse if I turned it off. And Radoslav Sikorski responded that Poland was paying for the service and said the ethics of threatening the victim of aggression apart. If SpaceX proves to be an unreliable partner, we'll be forced to look for other suppliers. Whereupon Rubio said Sikorski was just making things up. He said no one has made any threats about cutting Ukraine off from Starlink and say thank you, because without Starlink, Ukraine would have lost this war long ago and Russians would be on the border with Poland right now. Whereupon Elon Musk weighed in, replying, "Be quiet, small man." This is the Polish foreign minister he's speaking to. "Be quiet, small man. You pay a tiny fraction of the cost and there is no substitute for Starlink." Tom, this is what is this world?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? I have so many emotions to it. One being they're kind of all right, and that's the problem, in that we are dependent here in Europe on Starlink, and that is worrying. I think it was the former German Chancellor Angela Merkel who raised this quite a few years ago and just said, look, we can't be dependent as a continent on one billionaire's, ownership of satellites. We clearly need, if you're going to have any autonomy in the world, you're going to have your own satellite. And that just, I think, exposes Europe's problem here when we're thinking about our dependency on either Russia for our energy or now the United States for our liquefied natural gas, the United States for our defense, United States tech firms for our defense as well. I was reading an extraordinary piece over the weekend about the drone warfare that's now taking place in Ukraine. There's 2 million drones that are being made in Ukraine every year. But of course, they are dependent on microchips and all sorts of technology that's coming in from all over the world. So it's a really complicated and interconnected world, I think.
So there's two aspects to this story, Jane. We'll come back to the Starlink power of Musk thing in just a minute, because I'm fascinated by that, and I've written about that in the past. But the manner in which they're having this conversation, the manner in which they're having sort of global politics, global diplomacy, as a Twitter spat with Elon Musk saying, "Be quiet, small man," to the foreign minister of Poland. This is like, I guess this is what everyone said. This is what you'll get if you elect Donald Trump. But when you've actually got it, it's pretty striking. Yeah,
it is very unedifying.
Is there a pro to it, I suppose, is my question, because we see this stuff being played out openly rather than just sort of bitched about behind closed doors. No, there isn't.
Because I do think, I think in the same way that I think Trump's behaviour and rudeness and aggression emboldens other people to behave like that too. I think, this is just, it's playground behaviour. Honestly, Musk just sounds like, all the blokes who couldn't get girlfriends at school and now sort of like throwing his weight and his money, and his virility around. It's the small man thing. It's not Tinder. It's not, you don't have to put your height on it. Maybe pose with a fish as well. But also, I looked it up because, that's the kind of research heavy journalism that I do.
That's what you're here for.
And Sikorski is actually 5'11" and a quarter, which I'd say is kind of average, actually, not small at all. Donald Tusk is only 5'9", so, and if you're having a go at Poland, you could have a go at Donald Tusk. He is definitely smaller.
Nothing wrong with being 5'9".
No, Zelensky is 5'5" and 3/4. Obviously, Elon Musk, he's 6'2", and he's letting us know it. But I do think that it is deeply unedifying. And actually, I sort of semi met Elon Musk about 6 or 7 years ago. I was at an event at South by Southwest. He was there with Jonathan Nolan, the TV and filmmaker, who's a really good friend of his. And they were launching a season of Westworld at South by Southwest with a huge activation. And Elon Musk gave us all this presentation about SpaceX. And, it was incredible. It was genuinely incredible. And I sort of thought at the time, while very eccentric, I had a feeling that he was using his kind of quite visionary, MO to in a way to sort of make the world better with Tesla, with SpaceX, with Starlink and stuff. And now I just don't think that. I just think it's all ego and self-aggrandisement. And I think that he's like those people who go to work for a charity so they can tell you all about it.
I think people sort of lose the distinction in their own minds. He probably doesn't. I doubt it's that simple. He probably believes it's the right thing, and he believes it's the right thing to do because he wants to do it, and vice versa, I suppose. Tom, the reliance we were talking on before. Someone's Mark's messaged in while we were talking, saying it's not only Starlink, it's also GPS. Europe has no independence from America. Of course, there's the Galileo system that was designed to be a rival to GPS. But it's true, when you have these sort of huge infrastructures that so much of the world depend upon, and as they increasingly pass into private hands, it does make you feel very edgy and vulnerable, doesn't it?
Extraordinarily edgy and vulnerable. I think that is what seems to be sort of awakening. And maybe this is a kind of irony of Trump, but you have these figures of the kind of previous world, the globalized, rules-based order, like Mark Carney, who are being, becoming political leaders who are campaigning and winning popularity based on a kind of sense of patriotism and sovereignty, in Mark Carney's case, against the United States. And you kind of see that in Europe a bit, I think, now too, and you have former hardline Atlanticists like Friedrich Merz from the CDU, who are going to become German chancellor, talking about independence, as he said, from the United States. But you also have so many other ramifications. So you have the Polish leader Tusk talking, I think it was a few days ago. There's some suggestion that his words may have been taken out of context or mistranslated, but talking about Poland coming under an independent nuclear umbrella. The French and the Germans talking about whether they can share nuclear, the nuclear umbrella. So many things are happening, and it's a kind of reaction against the kind of rudeness and the bullying that we're seeing. I think Marco Rubio is perhaps the most pathetic of this group, because he doesn't believe it. Where you can see Musk, it's a kind of you can also almost see the kind of, I think he refers to himself as a kind of, autistic, genius who just sort of writes these things down and fires it off and doesn't care because he's so rich. But Rubio was saying something very, very different before, and this is him seemingly sort of ingratiating himself with the master. And it's just not quite as believable, is it?
Yeah, I was talking about Rubio today on the show with Catherine Philp, and she was saying there is a sort of some speculation in Washington that he might not last that long. He looked, Jane, I don't know if you saw Rubio during the Oval Office showdown. He was so uncomfortable.
Deeply uncomfortable. Yeah.
They're really, really strikingly so. Look, Tom, linked to all this, you've written about J.D. Vance. You said he's the epitome of what so many Europeans loathe about America: brash, insular, moralizing and imperious. And yet, even more annoyingly, like America itself, he combines this with intelligence, education, wealth, and ultimately power, which I think is, you make such a vital point here that you're basically saying the reason why people in Europe object so strongly to J.D. Vance, and God knows we do, is because he makes us feel bad about ourselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think when he said that remark, which really seemed to annoy us here in Britain, but also in France, particularly when what did he say? Some random European country offering 20,000 troops who's never fought a war.
Fought a war in 40 years, 30, 40 years, yeah.
Yeah, and that was, everybody put two and two together, and perhaps we got five, but I don't necessarily think we did get five. When we said the only two countries that had offered troops and who could sustainably offer 20,000 troops were Britain and France, certainly at that point. So was he talking about us? And then we got very offended and said, understandably so, that we lost as many people per capita as the Americans did in these wars. But, I went back and sort of read through what actually happened in, there is a book, Frank Ledwidge wrote it, and it's a really extraordinary book. It's called Losing Small Wars. And it just sets out how badly we performed there, and how much the Americans found us annoying by kind of lecturing them on how to conduct those wars, in which, from their perspective, we didn't commit enough troops to it. We lost. We had to be bailed out by the Americans. And so I think what Vance is sort of when he says what he says, it's revealing of what he really thinks and what the Americans really think about our efforts. They didn't need us. They weren't particularly impressed. And since then, we've reduced our capabilities and we're even more dependent on them. But we're asking for more. We're asking them to defend us in Europe, and we're asking them to extend their security guarantee to Ukraine. And I don't know if you saw, but this morning, there was a bit of a kickback among the kind of MAGA Twitter sphere, where they have highlighted the fact that the UK signed our own minerals deal with Ukraine. I think it was last year, and it's a 100-year partnership with Ukraine. And very specifically in that agreement, it says there is no security guarantee for Ukraine. This does not bind us into protecting you. And so they are saying, oh, God, we are being played by Keir Starmer. He's not offering troops. They're not offering security guarantee, and they get the minerals before us. So how dare they? But I think all of this plays in to that same sense that they no longer rate what we offer. And we kind of know this somehow deep down, that what we've got left is not enough. And we're so dependent on them. And that we're kind of having to deal with that and live it out, as you say, previously, in the open on Twitter. It's no longer kind of being polite anymore.
No longer concealed at all. Jane, before we move on from this, Tom also writes in his piece, he quotes Nietzsche, saying, when fighting monsters, you've got to beware becoming a monster yourself.
It's a great quote.
But it's based around this idea that actually, although at the moment we're being all internationalists, going, well, if America's retreating, we have to combine with the rest of the world. In fact, maybe some kind of British isolation, why can't I say this word? Isolationism could follow, because we'll end up thinking, you know what, if maybe we can retreat from the world. Maybe we don't need to be a reliable partner either.
I don't know. I mean, I think I love the Nietzsche quote, by the way, but I just think that there's a sort of still more of a communitarian attitude in this country.
I think there has to be when you're a small country.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, America can get away with what it's getting away with, and J.D. Vance can get away with speaking in the way that he is, because they really don't need anybody else. But I think, and I don't disagree that what he's saying has some elements of truth to it, but the manner in which he delivers it really could do with some work.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a member of, I think, like, he's a particular sort of man, and I'm sure I'll get some flack for saying this, but I think you find them more frequently in successful circles in America than you find them here. The manner in which they behave. He's, incredibly outspoken, really critical of others, very braggadocious. It's this kind of weird combination of arrogance, testosterone, kind of entitlement, and I just don't think it's a very British kind of attitude or sensibility, and I think that goes beyond just the way that he speaks towards a sort of international attitude. America's not an international country. I mean, you only have to look at their newspapers to realise that, they don't have a worldview that's any way similar to ours, and so I just don't see that's a kind of disease that we're going to catch from across the Atlantic.
Well, I think you can also, someone can be an oaf and also right. But you've got to, I guess, ask the question as well, is he saying these things because he's right, or is he saying them because he's an oaf?